Madame, I need you to vacate this seat. It is reserved for our VIP guests. The entire first-class cabin fell silent in an instant. Damon Price, the young head flight attendant, stood tall as if his command was absolute. Behind him, Victoria Hale, a white woman dressed elegantly in a fitted gown with a diamond-studded watch, tapped impatiently on its face, her eyes filled with disdain. The passenger they wanted to remove from seat 2A was Dr. Lena Carter, a 45-year-old black woman. She wore a simple navy suit, her hair neatly tied back, her expression calm. She lifted her head, her dark eyes shining with both surprise and disbelief. "This is my seat," Lena said softly yet firmly, pulling out her platinum membership card along with her boarding pass. At that very moment, no one in the cabin realized they had just ignited a storm that would soon engulf the entire airline, Aurora Jet. Damon froze for a second. He had not expected the woman in front of him to have the proper documents, but his polite smile quickly hardened into a cold expression. "I understand, madam, but this seat is usually reserved for our most special guests." His hand gestured discreetly toward Victoria, who smiled triumphantly, as though the matter had already been settled. The air in the cabin thickened. A few passengers frowned with discomfort. Others quietly raised their phones, recording the unusual scene. In Lena's mind, memories flooded back. All the times she had been underestimated, dismissed because of her skin color, because she was a woman in an industry dominated by white men. But she had learned to hold her composure, to use silence and reason as her weapons. "This is the seat printed clearly on my ticket," she repeated, her voice even, not loud nor weak, but strong enough for those nearby to hear. Victoria laughed, her smile sharp as a blade. "I always sit here. Everyone knows that. Surely today is no exception." Her words cut through the air like an invisible slap. Some passengers glanced at Lena with pity. Others looked at Victoria with disdain. What no one realized was that Lena Carter was not just any passenger. She was the founder and CEO of Fairsight Systems, a billion-dollar technology company specializing in AI that detects and eliminates bias in customer service. And Aurora Jet, the very airline in question, was desperately seeking to secure a $50 million contract with her firm. But in that first-class cabin, all anyone saw was a black woman being asked to stand up. Damon lowered his voice, nearly a whisper, yet loud enough for the cabin to hear. "We can do this the easy way, or the hard way." A vague threat, but everyone understood. A few passengers held their breath. A woman across the aisle tilted her phone, pretending to scroll the news, but had already begun recording. Lena did not move. She looked directly at Damon, her voice clear and deliberate. "I will not leave. This is my seat." 6 words, short but resonant, like a warning bell. Victoria leaned closer, whispering something into Damon's ear as she slipped a folded bill into his hand. The motion was quick, practiced. Damon froze, then his face stiffened with a decision, just greased. "I am sorry, madame. This seat will be reassigned. Please move to another." A wave of murmurs spread across the cabin. Some passengers pulled their phones out entirely, lenses aimed forward. The tension thickened until it was almost unbearable. Lena placed her hands on her lap, breathing slowly. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. In her mind, one thought burned bright. If I stay silent today, how many more will continue to face this treatment? She opened her bag, pulled out her phone, switched on the camera, and spoke firmly. Let me make this clear. I am being forced out of a first-class seat I purchased legally, simply because another passenger wants it. The cabin erupted. Passengers held their breath. Damon faltered, his composure cracking, and reached for her phone. But Lena pulled it back slightly, her gaze steady. There is no law preventing me from recording this. At that very moment, the cockpit door opened. Captain Arthur Miles, silver-haired, with a seasoned face, stepped into the cabin. Beside him was another attendant, both projecting authority. Madame, Arthur said gravely, we have the authority to reassign seats for passenger comfort. You must comply. Captain, Lena replied, her tone steady. I have a ticket. I am a platinum member. I do not ask for special treatment, only the rights I am entitled to. Her words rang out, not loud, not rushed, but weighted like iron. The entire cabin watched, every eye, every breath fixed on the moment. And in that silence, one truth became undeniable. This was no longer about a seat. This was a test of dignity, of a woman underestimated, yet holding in her hands the power to bring down an entire corporation. And this was only the beginning. The air in the first-class cabin was so thick you could hear every breath. A few passengers shifted uneasily in their seats, eyes locked on the scene unfolding before them as if they were witnessing an unofficial courtroom trial. Victoria Hale stood with her arms crossed, her stance dripping with self-satisfaction. Her voice rang out, sweet as honey, but laced with venom. Captain, I have an extremely important meeting after landing. I cannot waste any more time because of someone who does not understand the rules. She lingered on the words, someone, leaving a silence as sharp as a knife. Arthur Miles frowned, fighting to maintain the authority of a seasoned captain. Mrs. Carter, if you do not comply, we will have to call airport security. Regulations allow us to remove passengers who disrupt order in order to ensure the safety of the flight. Lena raised an eyebrow. Disrupt order? Simply because I'm sitting in the seat I purchased? The thought echoed in her head, but her lips still held a quiet, steady smile. Across the aisle, a middle-aged woman discreetly raised her phone, pretending to check the news. The screen glowed in recording mode. A young man behind leaned forward and whispered, This is definitely going to go viral." Damon Price, realizing the cabin was now under the weight of scrutiny, felt sweat bead on his forehead. But instead of retreating, he hardened his tone. "Madam, this is the final warning. We will remove you from the aircraft if necessary." Victoria let out a sharp laugh, her words falling like a judge's gavel. Finally, someone understands. Order must be kept. Lena lifted her chin, her dark eyes glimmering under the cabin's dim golden light. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate, her voice calm and unwavering. "You are threatening to remove me from this flight because I refuse to give up my rightful seat to someone who just bribed your staff." Her words cracked through the cabin like thunder. A few passengers gasped, trying to stifle their breaths. An older businessman shook his head, his lips forming the words, "Unbelievable." Arthur faltered, but quickly regained his stern posture. His voice hardened. "This is not the time to throw out unfounded accusations." But the phones had already captured Victoria, slipping money into Damon's hand. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Now every eye turned toward Damon, his face flushed, his lips pressed tight. The cabin fell silent, save for the low hum of the engines. Lena placed her phone on her lap, her camera aimed directly at the three men standing before her. "Let me make this clear. I am a passenger with a valid ticket, a platinum member, sitting in the seat I paid for. And now I am being threatened with removal because another passenger wants to claim it. I am recording this as evidence for my own safety." The silence deepened. Damon faltered. Arthur gripped the brim of his cap, and Brooke, the young flight attendant standing with them, took a half step back, her eyes flickering with doubt. In Lena's mind, an old memory stirred. At 16, standing at her father's grave, she had sworn to live a life where no one would ever diminish her. Rain had mingled with her tears that day, but her heart was resolute. And now, in this cold first-class cabin, that vow echoed back with unshakable force. Arthur opened his mouth to issue an order, but just then, the sharp ding of the cockpit door opening rang out. Two airport security officers stepped inside, their boots striking the floor heavily. "We were called to escort a passenger off this flight," one said in a deep voice, his eyes fixed on Lena. The cabin erupted into murmurs. Passengers whispered, phones shot higher into the air. Victoria squared her shoulders, the glint of victory flashing in her eyes. Damon inhaled deeply, ready to savor what he thought was the inevitable end. But when the officer's hand touched Lena's shoulder, she did not resist, did not scream. She rose with a steady grace, her posture tall, her gaze forward. Her voice rang out, clear and resonant, like a declaration. "I want everyone here to hear this. I am being forced off this flight, not because I disrupted anything, but because I refused to surrender the seat I purchased to someone else. My name is Lena Carter, and I will not allow this to be buried in silence." The words landed like a seismic shock. Victoria froze, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wavering. Damon stood rooted, his heartbeat hammering. A chill ran down Arthur Miles's spine. Because the name she had just spoken, Lena Carter, was no stranger. It was the name of the CEO of Fairsight Systems, the tech conglomerate holding 25% of Aurora Jet's stock. The very woman they had tried to throw out of her seat was the one with the power to decide the airline's fate. In that moment, the cabin was no longer a cabin. It was a stage. And every soul in it realized they had not just tried to expel a passenger. They had placed the future of Aurora Jet in the hands of the woman they thought they could humiliate. The storm had begun. The sharp click of the airplane door closing behind Lena Carter was the very moment the outside world erupted. As she walked down the jet bridge, her back straight and her gaze steady, dozens of phone cameras inside the cabin had already captured every detail. Victoria slipping money into Damon's hand, the cold frown of Captain Arthur Miles, Lena's voice sharp as a blade. "I am Lena Carter, and I will not allow this to be buried in silence." The first videos appeared on Twitter less than 10 minutes after Lena left the plane. Within an hour, the hashtag #AuroraJetDiscrimination had climbed straight to the top worldwide. In the airport lounge, Lena sat down, opening her slim laptop. Beside her, Nora Patel, her COO of 20 years, had just taken a frantic call from the communications team. "The video is exploding," Nora said quickly, fingers flying across the trackpad as news screens lit up. "Over 500,000 views in just 45 minutes. Celebrities are already resharing it. Aurora Jet, they're about to blow apart." Lena showed no signs of joy, no anger either. She simply nodded, her eyes steady as though she had seen this coming. "This is no longer about me, Nora. This is about everyone who has ever been pushed out simply because they didn't fit the image someone else decided." Across town, in Aurora Jet's glass tower, CEO Stephen Grant stood frozen before a massive crisis room screen. The video played on repeat, each cycle a dagger into the company's reputation. Damon taking money, Arthur issuing threats, Victoria Hale sneering. And finally, the name that left the room in stunned silence. Lena Carter. A communications director spoke with a trembling voice. "Shares are down 9% in less than 2 hours. If this spirals, we could lose 20% by end of day. Major outlets are already on it. CNN, BBC, even Al Jazeera." Stephen slammed his fist on the table. "God, Carter isn't just a passenger, She owns 25% of this company through Fairsight. We just humiliated one of the most powerful people in the industry." No one in the room dared breathe. Meanwhile, clips spread like wildfire across TikTok, each under 60 seconds, but each carrying the weight of 1,000 words. One angle showed Damon pocketing the cash. Another caption read, "Is this really happening in the 21st century?" One comment went viral. "This is the CEO of Fairsight Systems, a $2.8 billion tech firm. Aurora Jet just shot itself in the foot." Social media erupted. Some expressed rage. Others shared their own stories of being denied service, of being dismissed. A new hashtag emerged. At Eyesight in 2A, hundreds of thousands of people posting photos, declaring they too had once been the person pushed out of their rightful seat. Lena sat quietly as her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in. From her lawyer. "We have more than enough to sue immediately." From her partners, "The shareholders are calling. They want to know your plan." From a stranger online, "Thank you. I was once denied service because of my skin color. Today, you spoke for me." She pressed a hand to her chest, breathing deeply. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from fire that had waited too long to ignite. At a bar near the airport, a group of passengers who had witnessed the incident gathered over beers that rattled with their frustration. "A woman with a legal ticket, a platinum member no less, and they did that to her in front of everyone," one man fumed. "Do you even know who she is? Lena Carter, Fairsight Systems. Aurora Jet is finished." The laughter that followed was bitter, not amused, born of the realization that once injustice is exposed, it doesn't just wound an individual. It can sink an empire. In the Aurora Jet crisis room, Stephen Grant finally admitted what no one wanted to say out loud. We no longer control this story. Carter controls it. And if she chooses, a single word from her could end Aurora Jet. The air fell dead silent. Every eye turned toward the screen, where hashed Aurora Jet discrimination blazed in red. In that moment, one truth became undeniable. This was no longer a clash on a flight. This was a battle over justice, dignity, and power. A battle Aurora Jet was never prepared to fight. And Lena Carter, the woman they had tried to dismiss, now held the knife that could decide their fate. Inside Aurora Jet's glass tower, the top floor glowed brightly, though it was only 9 at night. The crisis room was packed. The faces of executives who once commanded thousands of employees, now pale. Their bloodshot eyes locked on the massive screen. The clip of Lena Carter being escorted out of first class looped over and over, each replay weighing heavier on the room like lead. CEO Stephen Grant braced both hands on the table, his voice hoarse. Do you understand? This is not just any passenger. This is Lena Carter, the woman who owns 25% of our shares. The woman deciding whether Aurora Jet survives or sinks. No one replied. Only the relentless ping of phones filled the silence, each alert another blow. Shares down 17%, forecasts of further free fall. A trembling PR director broke the silence. We need to issue a public apology immediately. Perhaps a video spread across all platforms, emphasizing this was an unfortunate incident. Stephen slammed his hand against the table, his voice sharp. An unfortunate incident? Are you blind? Our staff took bribes, our captain threatened, our crew violated every rule in plain sight. Carter has the evidence in her hands. An apology will not save us. At that moment, Stephen's phone buzzed. On the screen was the name that made everyone in the room swallow hard. Dr. Lena Carter. The room froze. Stephen hit speaker, forcing his voice steady. Dr. Carter, this is Stephen Grant, CEO of Aurora Jet. First, allow me to express my deepest regret for... Lena's voice cut through, calm yet sharp as a blade. I do not need regret, Mr. Grant. I need accountability. The room jolted. Some executives shivered, their hearts racing. Dr. Carter, perhaps we could meet privately to discuss this. Aurora Jet deeply values your position, and... No, Lena interrupted, her tone like ice. This was a public humiliation. It will be addressed publicly. I have 3 conditions, and I advise you to listen carefully. The room held its breath. Stephen closed his eyes, sweat breaking across his brow. First, Lena said clearly, all employees directly involved, Damon Price, Captain Arthur Miles, Brooke Ellis, are to be terminated immediately. No suspensions. No drawn-out investigations. Immediate. Stephen's eyes flicked to the head of HR, who lowered her gaze and nodded, trembling. Second, Lena continued, Aurora Jet will implement a comprehensive anti-bias training program, designed and overseen directly by Fair Sight Systems, from the highest executives to the baggage handlers. No exceptions. A finance director whispered nervously, the cost will be enormous. Lena's voice dropped, heavy as stone. The cost of reform is survival. The cost of avoidance is bankruptcy. The silence that followed dropped like a stone into their stomachs. And finally, Lena concluded, I am officially halting the $50 million contract negotiations with Aurora Jet. Only when I see genuine change will I consider revisiting it. Not sooner, not less. Stephen stammered. Dr. Takata, if we comply, could you perhaps help us contain the media? A pause hung in the air before Lena's voice came, calm but cold enough to freeze the room. I am not here to shield you. I am here to ensure Aurora Jet never repeats this humiliation. The choice is yours. The line went dead, the dial tone echoing in the heavy room like a morgue. Stephen looked around, his eyes sinking. You heard her. Either we do this, or Aurora Jet dies tomorrow. And in that moment, everyone understood. Aurora Jet was no longer in their hands. Power had shifted entirely to the woman they had once tried to force from seat 2A. The storm had only reached its eye. The next morning, Aurora Jet headquarters blazed with light from dawn. The story had dominated the front pages of every major newspaper. The image of Lena Carter being escorted off a plane, her head held high, spread across the world as a symbol of injustice and unyielding dignity. In the vast glass atrium, shareholders and board members crowded into the emergency meeting. The atmosphere was not one of discussion, but of judgment. A massive screen in the center of the room replayed the clip on loop. Victoria Hale slipping money into Damon's hand, the cold smirk of Captain Arthur, and finally, Lena's declaration ringing like a sentence. I am Lena Carter, and I will not let this be buried in silence. Each time her words echoed, faces paled and trembling hands clenched folders tighter. Stephen Grant entered, weary, but trying to uphold the posture of a CEO. He had not yet spoken when the door swung open. The room fell silent. Lena Carter walked in. No bodyguards, no entourage, just her, wearing the same navy suit from the day before. The suit that had witnessed her humiliation and now stood as a silent proclamation. Beside her walked Nora Patel, COO of Fairsight, eyes sharp and resolute. Lena's heels struck evenly against the polished wooden floor, each step pounding harder into the hearts of those who once thought they could push her out of seat 2A. Stephen hurried forward. Dr. Carter, allow me, on behalf of Aurora Jet, to extend. Lena raised her hand, cutting him off decisively. I am not here to hear apologies. I am here to demand accountability. The packed room trembled. Shareholders murmured, some nodding in agreement, others lowering their heads. Lena took the seat at the head of the table, not as a guest, but as the true authority in the room. Her gaze swept across every face. Her voice rang steady and firm. Yesterday, I was forced out of a seat that was rightfully mine. But this story is not just about me. It is the truth thousands of passengers have faced, unseen, unheard. Aurora Jet has become a symbol of bias, and today I am here to end that. No one dared interrupt. An older board member with silver hair spoke weakly. Dr. Carter, perhaps we should suspend the employees involved first, then investigate further. Lena turned to him, her eyes cold as steel. Suspension is not accountability. It is evasion. They took bribes. They threatened a passenger. They humiliated a customer. And you call that further investigation? The room fell silent. 100 eyes turned toward the man, who immediately lowered his head, his voice choking back into his throat. Lena pressed on, her tone stronger, her cadence relentless. I demand that Damon Price, Arthur Miles, and Brooke Ellis be terminated immediately. I demand that Aurora Jet implement a comprehensive anti-bias training program, from top executives to baggage handlers, supervised directly by Fairsight Systems. And I declare that the $50 million contract currently under negotiation is suspended until I see genuine reform. Her voice was not raised, yet each word landed like a gavel on the boardroom table. A long-time female shareholder rose, her voice trembling yet firm with agreement. Dr. Carter is right. Our stock has already lost 19% in a single day. If we do nothing, we lose not only money, we lose everything. Another nodded, speaking for the first time. Carter holds 25% of the shares. She could call for a vote of no confidence right here. We have no choice. Stephen Grant clenched his fists, knowing he had lost the game. He looked at Lena, his voice hoarse. Dr. Carter, Aurora Jet will comply. Lena tilted her head slightly, her eyes glinting with unwavering resolve. You need to understand. This is not an agreement. This is your final chance to prove Aurora Jet deserves to exist. I do not care for promises. I will oversee every step, If there is any attempt to avoid responsibility, I will not only withdraw my stake, I will tell the entire world the truth. No one in the room dared breathe too loudly. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. Aurora Jet, once a proud empire, had become a pawn under the authority of the very woman they tried to humiliate. Lena Carter, once the passenger cast aside, now held the fate of the airline in her hands. And the battle had only just begun. The morning news shook the entire world. Aurora Jet announced it would ground all flights for 48 hours to carry out a complete overhaul, a decision without precedent in the history of aviation. Television screens flickered non-stop with images of planes sitting idle on runways, a headline scrolling across the bottom. Aurora Jet grounds fleet for bias training. Viewers split into two camps. Some applauded, saying, "At last an airline putting human dignity above profit." Others fumed, "My family is stranded at the airport. Who will take responsibility?" But everyone understood. This decision was not voluntary. It bore the unmistakable mark of one person, Lena Carter. Inside Aurora Jet, meeting rooms turned into classrooms. Employees in uniform, from young flight attendants to middle-aged managers, crowded into rows facing massive screens. On them appeared the Fairsight Systems logo with the words, "Equity in Action." Lena did not remain backstage. She walked directly into the hall, wearing her familiar navy suit, her eyes unwavering. She was not standing as a victim, but as a leader. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady and deliberate. "I sat in seat 2A, but that seat could have been anyone. A teacher, a doctor, a soldier returning from war. And if your first reaction is to ask, who deserves it more? instead of how do we serve with fairness. Then Aurora Jet failed at that very moment. The hall fell into silence. A few attendants lowered their heads, shoulders trembling. The training sessions were not lectures, but live simulations. An elderly passenger ignored because he was not dressed expensively. A single mother eyed with suspicion for using her credit card. A passenger of color scrutinized more harshly than others. Employees had to role play, forced to choose how they would respond. And when they failed, the video replayed instantly on the screen, exposing the unconscious bias within themselves. A young attendant broke down in tears after realizing she had automatically chosen to serve a white passenger first. A veteran pilot frowned, muttering, "I have been doing this for 20 years and never thought about it." In another class, Lena stood face to face with seasoned staff. One man folded his arms, his tone defiant. "We do not discriminate. We just follow habit." Lena stepped closer, her eyes sharp but calm. "Habit kills fairness. Habit dragged me out of a seat that was rightfully mine. If you believe habit matters more than dignity, then Aurora Jet has no reason to exist." Her words sliced through the man's defenses. He lowered his head, silent. For 48 hours, the sessions continued. There were tears, anger, resistance. But through it all, Lena's voice rose, not as a command, but as a reminder. "This is not to punish you. This is your chance to change. I stood up from seat 2A, but now it is your turn to stand up against bias in your own work." Outside, reporters crowded Aurora Jet headquarters. Hour by hour, updates flashed across screens. Aurora Jet cancels 1,200 flights. Losses reach hundreds of millions. Passengers stranded worldwide, but many send messages of support, worth it if it brings real change. Lena Carter, the woman who made an entire airline hold its breath. A market analyst sighed live on air. "We are witnessing not just the reform of one airline. This is the redefinition of power in the global service industry." When the clock struck the 48th hour, a press conference was held. Stephen Grant stood on stage, face drawn but determined. At his side was Lena Carter, calm and resolute. Stephen spoke first, his tone heavy. "Today, Aurora Jet officially resumes operations. But this is no longer the old Aurora Jet. From the boardroom to the tarmac, we commit to change, and we will be held accountable by Dr. Lena Carter herself and the Fair Sight Systems framework." Then he stepped aside. Lena walked forward, her gaze sweeping across hundreds of lenses. She spoke, her voice clear and unyielding. "The past 48 hours came at a steep price, but fairness does not come cheap. Aurora Jet chose to stop and confront, rather than continue flying in falsehood. From this day forward, the sky is not only a place where planes take off, but a place where every passenger, no matter who they are, is treated with equal respect." The hall erupted. Cameras flashed wildly. The world watched. Aurora Jet would never be the same again. And Lena Carter, once forced out of seat 2A, had turned 48 hours of darkness into the dawn of a new era. Aurora Jet had just returned to the skies, yet public opinion remained divided. Some passengers praised the airline for daring to confront its mistakes. But in another corner, social media still roared. "Firing them is not enough. Real punishment is true justice." While Aurora Jet struggled to rebuild its image, The individuals who caused the 2A scandal began facing the shadows of their own downfall. Damon Price, the flight attendant who once accepted money from Victoria Hale, sat in his small apartment, the dim light casting his exhausted face in shadow. His Aurora jet uniform hung in the closet, now nothing more than a cold piece of fabric. He opened his laptop, scrolling through job postings, but every time he typed his name, search results carried the same damning headlines. Flight attendant caught taking bribe in first class. Each click was like a knife. His inbox overflowed with rejection letters. "We regret to inform you we cannot proceed with your application." Damon buried his face in his arms, his hands trembling. For the first time in his life, he realized the arrogance he once wore with pride had become his chains. On the outskirts of the city, Captain Arthur Miles, who had flown for 30 years, sat in silence in his wooden, paneled study. His captain's hat rested on the shelf, gathering dust. Once celebrated as the embodiment of composure, his name now appeared in headlines next to the words, "Threatened a passenger." A friend called. "Arthur, I am sorry, but the flight school cannot hire you as an instructor. They fear the stigma." Arthur closed his eyes, his heart hollow. 3 minutes of failure had turned a lifetime career into ashes. Brooke Ellis, the young flight attendant who had stood silently behind Damon, sat hunched in a cheap cafe. Her phone buzzed constantly, each time another message of scorn. "Accomplice. Coward. You stayed silent and let injustice happen." Tears streamed down her face, but she did not dare raise her head. Her fault was not action, but silence. And silence at times is more damning than a wrongful act. Then there was Victoria Hale, the woman with the mocking smile, now facing the harshest fall of all. The image of her slipping money into Damon's hand had become a meme spreading across the internet. People had given her a new name, Airline Karen. The luxury fashion company where she once served as PR director suspended her immediately. Friends distanced themselves. Charity galas stopped sending invitations. In her lavish apartment, Victoria sat surrounded by designer goods, but they held no value when the world saw her only as the symbol of arrogance and prejudice. One newspaper headline declared, "From VIP seat to society's shame, the story of Victoria Hale." Meanwhile, in a brightly lit room, Lena Carter and Nora Patel watched everything unfold. On the screen, they read the stories, the comments. Lena was silent for a long time before exhaling softly. "The world is quick to punish, Nora. But the question is, can people truly change after they have fallen?" Nora looked at her, eyes firm. "You cannot save everyone, but you saved an airline, and you saved the voices of millions who were forgotten." Lena nodded gently, though in her heart another thought flickered her, a thought of justice that went beyond punishment toward the possibility of redemption. Outside, the public furor had not eased. The hashtag #ISITIN2A still blazed. Yet alongside it, a new wave began to rise. If they are truly remorseful, should there be a chance for them? That was the seed of the next chapter in Lena Carter's journey, not only as the one who punished, but as the one who built the path for redemption. A month after the shock of 2A, Aurora Jet was slowly stabilizing. Flights operated as usual. Flight attendants smiled more warmly, and passengers' eyes held less suspicion. Yet public opinion remained divided. Forgiveness or relentless punishment? In the midst of it all, Lena Carter unexpectedly appeared on stage at an international conference on equity and service. The spotlight shone on her, the familiar navy suit now a symbol. A hall of thousands fell silent, television cameras aimed squarely at her. That day, I was forced out of my rightful seat, Lena began, her voice steady and low. Aurora Jet paid a heavy price. But this story does not end with punishment. Justice is not only about bringing down those who were wrong. Justice is about giving them the chance to rise again in a different way. The hall rippled with murmurs. Lena lifted her chin, her eyes bright. Today, I announce the Second Chance program. This is a Fair Sight Foundation initiative for employees who lost their jobs due to acts of bias or discrimination. They will undergo retraining, psychological counseling, face the truth, and if they prove genuine change, they can return to the workforce. A wave of gasps spread across the hall. Photographers clicked furiously. Some people jumped to their feet applauding, others frowned in doubt. Punishment may extinguish a career, Lena continued, but transformation can save a generation. We cannot change a system if we do not believe that people can change. The news spread like wildfire. CEO Lena Carter launches the Second Chance program. The woman who brought Aurora Jet to its knees now seeks to give opportunities to those who failed. Compassion or naivete? Headlines split public opinion. Supporters praised her as a leader balancing discipline with humanity. Skeptics sneered. Forgive someone who took a bribe? Is this justice or weakness? In a dim apartment, Dementwarusun Prayo read the news on his screen, his hand gripping the table edge. His heart pounded. Second chance. Those 3 words felt like a rope thrown down into the abyss where he had been falling. Arthur Miles paused before his television, his tired eyes glinting with a light he thought had been extinguished forever. Brooke Ellis sat hunched in her usual cafe, staring at her glowing phone screen, whispering, "Maybe I still have a chance to make things right." And in a place of luxury but loneliness, Victoria Hale reclined on her sofa, laughing bitterly. Second chance? I do not need to beg for a chance from anyone. Yet in the depths of her eyes, fear was plain. On the program's opening day, Lena appeared in person. On a white banner with blue letters, the words read, Second Chance Program, where accountability meets redemption. In front of the press, she declared, "Those who walk through these doors must face the truth. They will re-watch the very videos. They will hear the stories of those who were harmed. They will relearn the meaning of equity from the ground up. This is not an easy path. This is a test to prove that people can change." Nora Patel stood beside her, whispering, "You are opening a door the world has never dared to open." Lena replied, her voice calm but resolute. "No one can change the past, but if we refuse the chance for change, the future will forever repeat the darkness." The doors opened, and those once branded as culprits, once cursed by the world, now stood at a crossroads, remain lost forever in hatred, or step forward to reclaim their dignity. The answer would decide not only their fate, but the fate of the movement Lena had just begun. The training room of the Second Chance program, was nothing like an ordinary classroom. The walls were lined with screens replaying clips from the 2A incident. No edits, no cuts. Each image was a blade twisting in memory. Damon Price sat in the front row, shoulders tense. The screen showed him pocketing money, that smug smile etched across his face. He shuddered, tried to look away, but the instructor's voice rang out. "You must watch. This is not just a clip. This is the truth about you." Damon clenched his fists, nails digging into his skin. In his head echoed the mockery online, the job rejections. For the first time, he was forced to admit, "I sold my dignity for a few bills." Arthur Miles, the veteran captain, sat still, eyes red. On screen, he appeared again, his deep voice threatening Lena. "If you do not comply, we will have to remove you from this flight." Arthur buried his face in his hands. 30 years of flying, thousands of safe landings, all reduced to 3 minutes of failure. When asked to speak, his voice broke. "I thought I was protecting discipline, but in truth, I was protecting bias. I chose to side with the wrong, and I lost my honor." Brooke Ellis broke down as soon as she saw herself on screen, standing silent, avoiding Lena's gaze. She had not taken money, had not made threats, but her silence weighed heavier than anything else. "I know I was wrong," Brooke sobbed. "I saw injustice, but I said nothing because I was afraid of losing my job. And in the end, I lost it anyway. Worse, I lost myself." The program did not just force them to relive memories. It forced them to listen to the voices of those once mistreated. A black woman stood and said, "I was treated like a freeloader by airline staff. Just because I wore ripped jeans, I stayed silent, and I cried the whole flight. Do you know what that feels like?" Damon lowered his head. Brooke wiped her tears. Arthur looked straight at her, his voice trembling. "Now I do, and I wish I had understood sooner." In the days that followed, they faced simulations. Damon played the role of a black passenger, refused service by a co-worker. The humiliation cut deep, and he burst out, "It hurts. Not because of the service lost, but because I was treated as if I did not deserve to exist." Brooke had to step up in a scenario, this time her voice shaking but clear. "No, he has the right to be here. I will not stay silent again." Arthur instructed a group of younger trainees, his voice firm. "Do not repeat my mistake. Leadership is not bowing to bias. It is protecting fairness for every passenger." After 8 weeks, they were told to write their final reflections. Damon wrote, "I lost everything, but for the first time, I understand why. I want to begin again, and I will not let the shame of that day be the end of me." Brooke wrote, "I promise I will not stay silent again. If I must choose, I choose to speak up, even if the cost is losing my job." Arthur wrote, "I once thought experience was my legacy. Now I know. The true legacy is the lesson for the next generation, that justice must always outweigh habit." On graduation day, Lena arrived. They stood in line, eyes tense. She looked at each one, not with easy forgiveness, but with a gaze that tested them. "You fell. Lena said, her voice low and resonant. But falling is not the end if you rise the right way. Remember this: fairness is not a slogan. It is a choice made again and again, every day. Damon, Brooke, and Arthur nodded silently. Tears streamed down their faces, but this time they were tears of resolve. Outside, public opinion still doubted. But inside that room, the first seeds of redemption had been planted. And Lena knew, if these people could change, then an entire industry could change. Graduating from the Second Chance program did not mean the road ahead would be lined with roses. For Damon, Brooke, and Arthur, the outside world still looked at them with wary eyes. Damon Price submitted applications to dozens of places. Each time, employers paused when they saw his name. But this time, Damon did not hide. He spoke openly. I failed. I took a bribe. I paid with my honor and my career. But I have learned the meaning of fairness, and I want to prove that I have changed. A small cargo company accepted him in the baggage handling department, not as a first-class flight attendant. Damon nodded, smiling a smile he had not worn in a long time. Starting over from the ground is fine. Brooke Ellis found a job at a regional airline. The first time she put on her new uniform, her hands trembled as she looked in the mirror. She was no longer the girl who stood silent in the cabin. During an internal training session, a simulation played out, a passenger being treated unfairly. Brooke took a deep breath, stepped forward. No, he has the right to be here. I will not stay silent again. The instructor gave her a small nod, and Brooke understood. She had just cut the chains of silence from her past. Arthur Miles could not find a chance to return to the cockpit. At 58, no airline dared to hand the controls back to a man with a tarnished name. But he did not give up. He joined the Second Chance program itself, this time as an instructor. Facing a classroom full of tense faces, Arthur spoke in his gravelly voice. I was a captain. One wrong threat destroyed 30 years of my career. But I am here to tell you, do not wait until you lose everything to understand what justice means. The young people sat quietly, listening. In their eyes, Arthur was no longer a fallen man. He was a living lesson. News of their journeys spread. The press called them the trio who proved second chance. Damon, once a man who took a bribe, now a model worker, ready to carry the heaviest bags. Brooke, once silent, now a voice defending fairness on every flight. Arthur, once a disgraced captain, now planting seeds for the next generation. People debated, can they be trusted? Or is this just pull? But for Lena Carter, the truth was much simpler. Change is real. In Fairsight's high-rise office, Nora Patel handed Lena a new report. Surveys show that 72% of passengers feel Aurora Jet service has clearly improved, and Second Chance is being considered by many other companies. Lena looked out the glass window at the wide blue sky. That day, they forced me out of seat 2A. But that very moment forced the world to sit down and face the truth. Justice cannot be borrowed. It must be practiced every single day. In the hearts of everyone who had witnessed the story, seat 2A was no longer just a seat. It was a symbol that even when you are pushed out, you can return, stronger, clearer, and able to change an entire system. And for Lena Carter, the journey was not over. Seat 2A was only the beginning. The skies were still full of injustices waiting to be brought to light. In this vast world, injustice does not only exist in courts or parliaments. It can begin inside an airplane cabin, with a contemptuous glance, or with a seemingly harmless remark. But from seat 2A, Lena Carter proved that one steadfast individual can turn humiliation into a fire that transforms an entire industry. Aurora Jet thought they had merely removed a passenger. In reality, they awakened a movement. Damon, Brooke, and Arthur, those who once fell, now stand as proof that people can atone, can change, if given the chance. Above all, Lena Carter delivered a message to the world. Dignity cannot be bought, cannot be bargained, cannot be stripped away. It is the inherent right of every human being. The question remains, if one day you witness injustice before your eyes, will you choose silence, or will you rise, like Lena Carter, and declare, "I will not let this be buried in silence"? If you believe that fairness is not a privilege but a right for us all, hit like to spread this story. Do not forget to subscribe to join us on the next journey, where secrets are exposed and justice always finds its voice. Leave a comment with the words, "Dignity first," to let the world know that you too believe human dignity must always come first.